Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We'll start in about 1 minute. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ethan Felson, and I'm the new executive director of A Wider Bridge. Today is my 8th day. Today's program, Arab and LGBTQ in Israel, How Tahini is Sparking a National Conversation, is in webinar format. All participants are on mute and can only see the speakers. However, during the program, I encourage you to use the Q&A box to submit questions, and we'll answer as many as we can during today's program. Today's webinar is brought to you in partnership by A Wider Bridge and the Interagency Task Force on Israeli-Arab Issues, since it touches on the intersection of LGBTQ issues in Israel and Israel's Arab society. And I want to add that I'm thrilled that this first time I'm getting to speak with everyone in this new role is in partnership with the Interagency Task Force, a group that I have worked with and respected for many years. I also want to note that we're joined by A Wider Bridge's chair, Alan Schwartz. So a little bit more about A Wider Bridge. A Wider Bridge is the North American LGBTQ organization working through education, advocacy, and relationship building, including grant making, to create equality in Israel by expanding LGBTQ inclusion throughout the state of Israel, and equality for Israel by cultivating constructive engagement with Israel from the LGBTQ communities in Canada and the United States. I'll turn the call over to Liron.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're so delighted to be partnering with A Wider Bridge on this webinar, and Ethan, a real pleasure to be able to partner with you early in this new role. The Interagency Task Force, as you mentioned, is an educational organization dedicated to making insights and information about Arab citizens and Jewish-Arab relations within Israel available to the American Jewish community. Over these past weeks, there has been an eruption of discourse and controversy within Israel, and especially within the Arab community, about LGBTQ rights. This was ignited by a public donation made by Julia Zahar, Arab owner of Al-Arz Tahini, to the Aguda, Israel's national LGBTQ task force. The donation was met with unprecedented backlash by the Arab community for both openly supporting LGBTQ issues as well as for supporting them via a Jewish rather than Arab-led NGO. As supporters rallied around Al-Arz, the ongoing controversy is bringing long-suppressed discussion of Arab LGBTQ issues into the open. Moreover, this controversy is erupting at the same time that a bill on banning conversion therapy has been up for its first vote in the Knesset, and the issue has become a pivotal and divisive one for Arab political leaders. Before I introduce the speakers who will shed light on this discourse, these events, and take us through some of the many layers it's raising, I want to give 60 seconds of background about Arab citizens of Israel to set the stage. So the Arab community within Israel makes up nearly 21% of the population, approximately 1.9 million citizens and residents living within the Green Line. 82% are Muslim, 9% Christian, and 9% Druze. Though diverse in its own right, the Arab communities tend to be more traditional, and like other traditional societies around the world, they're dealing with the complexity of navigating between roots and modernity. The Arab LGBTQ community is perhaps one of the groups that is most squarely dealing with the tensions between on this spectrum. On top of this roots to modernity spectrum, Arab society comprises by far Israel's most disadvantaged population, with poverty rates more than double of the Jewish majority, and the lowest ranked communities on Israel's socioeconomic scale. It's a scale of 1 to 10. Most Arab communities are 1 to 3. Major efforts to close socioeconomic gaps are making a dent in recent years, but relevant to today's topic, most Arab towns and communities are still lacking in terms of community resources and services. So this is the context in which the LGBTQ communication is coming to the surface. And with no further ado, we are extremely fortunate today to have Hila Peer and Ohad Hizki, respectively Chair and CEO of the Aguda, and Khader Abuseif, activist, artist, and spokesperson for the Tel Aviv municipality about Jaffa Arabs. He is probably best known to American Jewish audiences for being featured in the 2015 film Oriented. Ethan, would you like to get us going with the first question?
Yes, thank you very much. Hila, can you start by telling us what was the vision for Aguda's crisis hotline and what the discussions have been surrounding it?
Well, hi, and first of all, before I even start, I'd like to welcome Ohad sitting next to me, just like Liron said before. And I'll try to take down your question to answer in under 40 minutes. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, so if you have any questions, please stop and direct me. That will be welcomed. I'd like to say a few words about the Aguda just to give some kind of context to the projects of the Arab-Palestinian LGBTQ community. The Aguda, as it's formed today, it's pretty much 45 years old, and it has changed focus about 5 years ago, understanding the arena of all the other organizations that work in the gay area in Israel. The decision that was made was to change the concept in which the organization works in and to form some kind of a hub for other NGOs or groups that want to represent certain pieces and parts within the LGBT community, to form some kind of a hub for them to form it, to grow, to fundraise through, and then eventually when they're prepared to set off on their own path. So with that realization, living in a climate where the data is pretty clear cut, 20% of your population in Israel are Palestinians. If we look at the estimates that are globally accepted that about 10% of the global population is LGBTQ, we're looking at about 190,000 people that are from the Palestinian or Arab, doesn't matter if Christian or Muslim, that are LGBTQ. And for the last, I think, 3 years, there's been a stable increase in extreme cases that will come by to the media, that will come and known through the gay community, either Jewish or Arab, about violence, about stabbings, about people running away from home, being hunted down by their families. And that was a reality that Aguda and the other organization had to face, trying to look for ways to work with and to better that community. I have to say that there are two other organizations that work, that identify as LGBTQ organizations from the Arab society. They're called Al-Arz and Aswat. I am also afraid to say that the efforts that we have made to work with them were not fruitful over the last 2 years. We tried to build programs together to cooperate. It didn't come to pass, and in about the middle of last year, we got to the realization that this cannot stay as it is. The Aguda offers a lot of services for individuals, whether it's psychosocial services, legal services, support services, groups, but we can't really integrate into those services. We have to create something specific. So as old and wise as we are, we decided we're not going to just start doing it. We're going to take a step back. We're going to have a little research about it. And we reached out to all the other organizations working in the field. You see, Ohad is confirming. This is good. Once he stops confirming, I'm in trouble. Let me know. I don't always look at it. So give me a heads up when he nods the other way. So I'll give you a little taste of what the data that we got from our study is. We have 3 main hostel shelters for youth in Israel for gay youth. And basically, one of them is for ages 14 to 18. And in 2019, 26% of the people that stayed in that hostel were from the Arab community. That is off the chart comparing to the fact that the Arab community inside Israel is only 20%. And in the other two that are for the ages 18 to 25, there were 35% in average of the people staying in the hostel. And the people that stay in hostels and youth hostels in Israel are people that have been kicked out and have no way to support themselves, either young aged or closer to the age of 25, which I have to say from my old age, 25 is still young. So thank you for the smiles, you're encouraging me. But seriously though, understanding that those cases, the people that get to the shelter houses are very extreme. And if the percentage is so high there, what's going on with all the middle and the people that are still in the closet? And if we're thinking about almost 2 million people in Israel, that's 190,000 LGBTQ members that we need to somehow support and help. So we figured we cannot stand still anymore, and we decided to build an entire program for Arab LGBTQs. That means that the vision that Ohad had is basically to take the Aguda and duplicate it. Because if I want to give good service, I have to give peer eye-to-eye level service. I have to create a group of equals to support each other and promote each other. And the main thought and focus is, I don't want the Jewish community in Israel to promote the Arab community in Israel. I want the Arab community in Israel to self-sustain and promote itself. I wanted to create leaders. I wanted to create people to be role models for the kids who are still in the closet or the not kids that are still in the closet. So that's the path we set on, and we created this whole plan of duplicating all the Aguda services into Arabic. And basically, the notion is that in 5 years' time from when we launch, we want this project to set off on its own path. We want it to be its own LGBTQ Arab organization. And the thought was, okay, we need to start somewhere, so how do we start? So we looked back through the pages of history and we saw that the first project, basically, that the Aguda had back in the 70s was a hotline. And it made perfect sense, because the first thing you want to do is try and make human connection in a way that people can still be anonymous, that's just to gain confidence. So we started looking for supporters, starting mapping out the field, starting finding Khaders of all kinds of sorts that would be able and willing. Now Khader's laughing, you can't even see that, but he has a beautiful smile. We started looking for those people to start mapping that out and see if we're looking at this in a too Jewish kind of way, and I hope you can understand what I'm saying, or if this is actually reality and this is what should happen. So after we got enough affirmation for that thought, we decided we're all in, so we're going for it. And a connection was made to the Zahir family that has the Tahini of love, as we now call it. And they agreed to support the hotline. And that is how everything started. And Ethan, do you want me to just go on, or do you want to focus this through other questions?
We finished. Add more, then we want people to put questions in the Q&A box, and we'll want to hear from Khader and have a conversation.
So do you want? I'll just go on and tell you guys everything that happened from there.
Yeah. Oh,
okay?
yeah. The last couple of weeks. Yes.
Just a few couple weeks.
Yeah.
Hectic weeks. So what happens? It happened is we met with Julia and Yusuf, her son, and what we decided on, and I have to say from the bottom of my heart, I have never met people as forthcoming and amazing as they are, and brave, I must add. This is the first time in history that an Arab company is donating for an LGBTQ cause. This is coming from within the society, and this is the main difference in what happened right now. So we met, and we had this whole plan, and they knew all of our agendas and what we want to accomplish eventually. And we decided on launching just talking about the hotline. And we made this kind of a media plan. We said, okay, we'll do for initially, we'll just have a Facebook post. That's it. Not even sponsored, no media, nothing. Not talking about amounts, not talking about anything. And that will be kind of testing the waters. And then we said, okay, we'll wait, let's say a week, 2, 3, maybe a month afterwards, and we'll go out publicly. We'll initiate some kind of a media move to expose the fact that they're donating. Well, it's kind of easy and maybe kind of elementary to say right now, but that plan didn't come to happen, not at all. Basically, a week after that, the Aguda posted that Tahini Al-Arz is supporting the LGBTQ Arab hotline that we're about to launch. And in a day, a certain figure from the Arab Society, maybe Khader knows who it is, I have no idea, who has another Facebook group that's about 180K, took it and published it as a screenshot saying, Tahini Al-Arz is supporting perverts. And this ignited. This blew up way out of our hands. It came to all the big TV networks. It got to all the papers. Every single media was on it. We couldn't even control it. It was scary the way it went by. And the bad reactions were very, very, very intense. That was the initial feeling of the first 3 days. The Arab Society, for the most part, the voices that we heard that are always the loudest, condemned it wall to wall. The Zahir family, not true, not wall to wall. The voices that we heard at the beginning. The Zahir family they were all together in their house in Nazareth. They were getting awful feedback, very, very bad, very hard to take in, anywhere from talking about boycotts to physical threats. And it took a while for that to ease down. So we tried to control the media. Actually, for the first 3 days, we tried to hold back. We didn't give any interviews. We didn't comment about anything. We tried to mellow it down a bit so the family would feel a bit more safe. But it took 2 days for amazingly positive feedback to come. The first feedback was, well, basically, I have to speak personally, and maybe Ohad would say differently, but my entire Facebook page for 3 whole days had nothing but Tahini on it. Nothing but Tahini. And after I couldn't stop seeing Tahini on it, I couldn't stop seeing empty shelves that were supposed to be holding Tahini in supermarkets. It was amazing. The Jewish community hugged and embraced and supported the Zahir family like I have never experienced before. And after the public did it, other companies started to do it. We're talking Microsoft Israel issuing a post saying that the only Tahini that will ever come into the Microsoft offices will be Tahini Al-Arz because they support them. We're talking about the president of Israel being interested in what's happening, wanting to enforce their hands. We're talking about people who are celebrity figures in Israel reaching out to the Aguda, asking us, what's the Zahir family's address at home? We want to send them flowers. We want to encourage them personally. And that is about as moving as it can be. And we thought it was going to stay there, and it didn't even stay there. It got even bigger. And when it got even bigger, it means politicians started commenting on it, right to left, and from the Arab society too. We're talking with the first reaction was Ayman Uda's, and this one can be judged to both sides. But Ayman said, and this was after the official consumers boycott was issued on Tahini Al-Arz within the Arab society. Ayman Uda posted a tweet and a Facebook post saying, basically the direct quote would be, it's hypocritical to boycott Tahini Al-Arz if you're not boycotting other products that are supporting the occupation. So you can see it as backing up Tahini Al-Arz for the LGBTQ contribution, and you can say that it's kind of shying away. So that quote was kind of, depends on how you look at it. But not long after that, Aida Tuma Suleiman issued a post that was amazing. She said, not hiding behind anything, she said flat out, LGBTQ rights are human rights and should not be discouraged or diminished in any way. And that was amazing. That was unbelievable.
I'm gonna jump in at that point, Hila, because I think Khader had something to do with some of those quotes by the leadership, and I want to hear a little bit from Khader about the discourse and the experience of this whole movement. Thank you for the background, for explaining what happened, because it is really so layered. But Khader, beyond what happened with Tahini, there were a number of events this year leading up to the donation that already had begun to make waves in the LGBTQ discourse. Can you please take us a little bit into the context and then the response from within Arab LGBTQ?
First of all, thank you, Hila. That was amazing. Really, really amazing. I couldn't do it better myself, actually. But I think that in the last year, we're seeing this deep change inside of the Palestinian Arab community, the LGBTQ community inside of Israel, inside of this country. And I will not say it's a revolution, because it's not a revolution, but something is happening. And I think it started when, almost a year ago, we had this 16-year-old get out of his parents' home, and he came to Tel Aviv to stab his brother because he's gay. And I think that this story about the two brothers, one of them is coming to stab his brother because he's gay, lit a conversation inside of the Arab society, inside of the Arab LGBT community. And I think that chronologically, after that, what happened was the death of the dancer Ayman Sofia. And Ayman Sofia, when he died, he was the first LGBTQ Muslim artist that has gay funeral. It was crazy. It wasn't religious, and when you're Muslim, most of the funerals are religious, and it wasn't religious. And we see dancing, and we saw a huge amount of LGBT in this funeral, and it was so crazy, amazing, and exciting to see this kind of thing. And what happened in this funeral, that the funeral lit another conversation, because immediately, almost, the sheikhs from the mosque and the let's say the Orthodox Muslim, they really didn't like this kind of funeral. They didn't like the concept of it. And I think that was the beginning of this conversation about what does it mean to be an LGBTQ in the Arab community? Because for the first time from the Ayman death, we started to hear new voices of Arab from the inside of the Arab community that talking in the beneath of the LGBTQ community. And it was crazy. We didn't hear it's wrong and it shouldn't happen. We started also to hear, let them live their lives and let them be whoever they wanna be. And that was the first time that we can hear it inside of the Arab community on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere. And it was encouraging, because it was kind of a beginning of something. But I think that the Tahini was the jewel of it all, because I think that I knew about the story of the Tahini, but I didn't really was involved until I started to see a lot of videos and chats on Facebook and Instagram about inside of the Arab society about boycotting the Tahini. I saw this video of the supermarket owner. He's putting his hand and he's just carrying a lot of Tahini, Al-Arz Tahini, into the garbage. And he was we will not support the perverts, and we will not support this freaks of nature. And that was the moment that I understood that I need to do something. So I started to write to anybody that I know that is Arabic, Jewish. I didn't care. I wrote about it in Al-Arz, and I wrote about it in my Facebook. And I started to say, listen, we need to change this. We need to show Zara from Tahini Al-Arz that she have our support, Arabs and Jews. And what was amazing was actually in a few hours after the post of everybody that really wanted to help, and in a few hours after the the Arab community and the Jewish community, not all the Arab community, but a lot of people also inside of the Arab society started to write positive posts about the Tahini Al-Arz. And this is the real changing that the real change that we're having right now. I think that I came out from the closet when I was 15. I think that in those times, like nobody will speak beneath, like nobody will support LGBTQ so openly. And I think the fact that Arab Palestinian Tahini factory is supporting the Arab LGBTQs, for the Arab LGBTQs, it was for us like a spark of hope. We understood that we can do so many in this place, because until this point, we didn't even know that this option is on the table for us. And I think like a lot of gays and lesbian and trans people in this part of time, like in 2020, gain enough friends in the Arab society. And I'm talking about LGBTs Arab, gain so many friends inside of the Arab society. I think that now in Haifa, you have like a lot of people coming out from the closet. So a lot of mothers and fathers starting to understand that they cannot let their kids just throw away or go out. I don't think that it's like I'm not really think that this is like the pink idea about how I am imagining the life to be for LGBTQs Arab. But I think that we started like kind of this Tahini thing. It started like this weird feeling, even though it's like COVID-19 and like it's 2020 and nothing. I think that something inside of the Arab community and the Arab society and something about the LGBTQs community is starting, is just the start, is starting to change. And this thing is giving me hope, because for the first time, we can see Arab leaders support us. I don't really want to talk about what Ayman Odeh wrote. I want to talk about what Aida Tuma Sulaiman wrote. She was so supportive, but she wasn't supportive like, yeah, I'm gonna support now. There was a pressure. There was a huge pressure also from inside the Arab society for her to write about the thing. Because until this point, these people didn't really, they like always said, we believe like every person has the right to be whoever who is, but they never used the word LGBT or LGBTQ. And for Aida to write it on Twitter, it was such an amazing thing for us. And I even though I wasn't part of the process, I was so happy to be part of the aftershock about it. I was so happy to be part of this whole thing that happening. I really for like, I don't remember when was the last time that I felt like a hero, but I really felt like a hero. It's weird to say it, like I felt like I changed something in the idea about what does it mean to be an LGBTQ in the Arab society. And it's an amazing feeling. And I think what was like another step for the thing was the therapy conversion law. I think the fact that Ayman Odeh and Aida Tuma Sulaiman was in our side, it was like we have Arab Palestinian members in the Knesset that actually vote in our beneath. It's like, whoa.
Do we want to jump in there now and give the conversion law a bit of context? Say there was a first reading of a law that said before Israel even establishes conversion therapy as a platform, there's a law to ban it. And I don't know how controversial it was beforehand, especially not among the joint list leadership, but certainly in parallel with the discourse about Al-Arz, it took on this conversation took on new significance about what the joint list was potentially a key pivotal vote on this law. And I'll just jump ahead and say that Aida and Ayman Odeh voted 4, 5 against, and 8 abstained. Three. Right, Ofer Kasif. I keep forgetting Ofer Kasif. Three voted for, 4 abstained, and 4 against, and 8 abstained.
I have to jump in just for a second to say something about this. This is unprecedented.
Amazing.
Completely. This is, I think, I don't know how many years went by until we finally saw today. We've had years of darkness that we have never seen in at least the last decade. An openly pro-LGBTQ law passed in the Knesset. Doesn't matter if it's a pre-reading. The last time it happened was the surrogacy law passed in the pre-reading and then it fell. But this was unbelievable. And what Khader is talking about, 3 members of the joint list voting for, is amazing. It's simply amazing. And I don't think it would have happened without the pressure that people like Khader.
What's the reaction to in the Arab street? I have this, Ethan, I'm sorry, please stop me, but or jump in. I'm curious, there's the social media discourse, there's the reaction in public, and then I'm curious also about the reaction at the dinner table.
Others.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Hila, please.
No, it's fine. I think it's still controversial, of course. It is still controversial, but for the first time, it's controversial. Because I think if it would happen like 5 years ago, it will be totally bad. It probably will not be happening. But the fact that they did it and they took the conversation even further about the Tahini, because it's the same, it's practically for the Arab community, it's practically the same conversation. We're still talking about this freak of natures. And the fact that they took it to the next step and the fact that they voted in our beneath, it's crazy. So I think something is starting to change. I think that there is tons of work, but like we can still see like videos and like some posts on Facebook or Twitter that are really against what they did, but you can also see a lot of support, and it's just giving me hope. I really think that things are starting to change. I think that if it was like even 1 year ago, it will be way more crucial by the Islamic organizations about this, what they did, it will be like backlash for it. And I think that it passed like kind of in a mellow way. It wasn't that crazy.
I'd like to add to what Khader just said, and I think what we did basically with this move that we didn't anticipate in any way is we shook up the status quo in the Arab society regarding the hush agreement. It's kind of, it's an issue, but you don't talk about it. I think that's what Khader meant when he said, it never really was a dinner conversation because it's not legit to even talk about it. So what we did by coming out with this is, well, for the lack of a better term to say, but we were kind of an elephant in a china store, and we shook a bit of the tectonic plates to rearrange them to make this issue legitimate to talk about. And this is kind of, I'm being kind of historical right now, and you'll excuse me because of my old age, but this is kind of a Stonewall starting a conversation, breaking out to start dealing with it. And sure, there's tons of work. There's unbelievable amounts of work. I don't think I even anticipated how much work there is to be done. But the fact that the reactions that we got show us how much work there is to be done. And work cannot be done without frustration to fuel it. And if you get frustrated by the reactions, you can start going.
If I can just say,
I don't know if you watched it, but like you should see the reaction of the Jewish Orthodox parties about this law. It was so funny. I really loved it. They went nuts. The Jewish Orthodox parties went nuts. They started to scream and yell, and oh my God, it was a pleasure to watch it. I enjoyed so much.
Let me just say that we know that none of this work happens in a vacuum, that it happens because of really heroic work, and that we're very grateful to be on the line today with a few of those heroes. So just bookmark for the moment just how grateful those of us who are observing this from afar are for the tremendous risks that you all take and the strategy that you have with the work that you do and the passion you bring to it, and to remind ourselves that those of us who read about these things and want great things to happen, there are things we can do, such as supporting what you are doing and the risks that you are taking. You need to hear from us how much we value and treasure the work that you're doing. I want to jump to a couple of the questions online and remind people that you can put questions in the Q&A box. And I've got two and a comment that I'll share, and then let you take it, and then we'll see if we can get another couple of rounds in. The first is, what is your relationship with the Druze community? Has the nation state law affected their willingness to engage? Another, is there a hope for joint action with Jewish and Arab shared society on issues related to LGBTQ? So can Jews, people in the Jewish sector and Arab sector work together on this, or are the issues really so different in each community? And I think we just had an example where there was an alignment in terms of the work. And then another person wrote in that it was inspiring conversation, and the person was reminded at the time that she visited the Jerusalem Open House and was greeted by 4 Arab trans women who refused to let her leave until she was filled with falafel and pickles and coffee. And they had translated Arabic to Hebrew to English and back just to have a conversation. So I love the warmth from that. So if we can, first on the Druze question, and then in terms of whether people can work together. And then I would also love to hear some thoughts on how the pinkwashing issue, how that accusation, what that means, and how that relates or doesn't relate to this. Thank you.
בבקשה, הילה.
Arabs first.
First, okay, well, collaboration between Jewish and Arab. There you go. I'm gonna answer about the Druze thing. I think that sometimes when we see development in some places, we really want to rush it out. We want it to be like, yeah, let's rush it out. Let's do it. What about the Druze? What about the Druze? I think that the Druze, it's really, really, really close community. And it's really, really small community. And in this kind of communities, sometimes you need to change to happen from the inside out. You cannot rush the change in such a small communities. You should give them the time, because I know about LGBT community, Druze community, but like it's really small, and I think that it will take time to break the walls in this kind of society. It's not like the major Muslim Arab society here, or the Christianity, because it have different religious, it have different practice that they do, and like you should just give it time. I think that when I was like, I think 15, there was like this competition about it called like, I think Mr. Gay Israel. And I think that one of the, I swear, and I think that one of the persons that won was a Druze soldier. He was like the Mr. Gay Israel for 1990 something. So I think that everything is a process, especially inside of this country. It's such a complicated and full with like this small little communities and small thing that you should be observe and see and understand. And I think that if the big Arab community here is starting to raise the subject of LGBTQs just in 2020, it's the time for the Arab community to speak about it. So I will not rush the Druze. I will give them their time, maybe in a few years, I hope.
I'll take in the second question about working together. And I think it kind of correlates to what Khader said right now. I think the answer is pretty much the same. I think looking at the climate that people in Israel live in, we're all kind of in fabric. We each have a lot of identities. I'm a lesbian, I'm a woman, I have a political stand, I have a party that I vote for, and maybe Khader has a different one. And maybe other of my friends have different ones. So inside the Jewish gay communities, we have different groups too. But we have to find a way to work together with our common ground, which is our fight for equality. And I think that is pretty much the same for the Arab society. We can all connect on a same level, which is the aspiration to be equal under the law and not be discriminated in any way. So as we learned with the rest of the 15 organizations working with the LGBTQ community in Israel, if we each work alone, we only do half a step forward. But if we start working together to promote that common goal, we can reach much more. So I think that goes about the same between Jewish communities of the LGBTQ and Arab communities. Just like I personally believe that within the Arab LGBT community, you can have two groups too, at least. You can have the Muslims and the Christians. Does it even help to separate them? Why separate them? If they have the same basic goal, if they have a way to work together. So I think that is the main thing. So I think the best outcome for us moving forward, just like the Aguda doesn't want to hold in the project of the Arab LGBTQs and we wanted to have its own separate identity to give services to the community. I want them to be self-sufficient and work together, not under. And that is the best way moving forward.
And we need to understand also that the Aguda and IGI are already working with Palestinian Muslim or Christian Arabs. We have already the collaboration inside of the organization. We have Arab mentors, and we have already started this path together. So I guess, yeah, really soon. Or already, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Should we take some more questions from the Q&A? There are more questions about, are there separate issues to be addressed involving LGBT outreach in Bedouin communities as well? It's correlated, but maybe you can speak to some of the challenges, the unique challenges. There is a question from Facebook. I read the criticism from one of the Palestinian LGBTQ organizations of the Tahini initiative because of perceived complicity with the occupation. Is this view prevalent among the Arab LGBTQ community in Israel? If so, what can Israeli LGBTQ organizations do to overcome it? You began to touch on it, but maybe it's worth expanding what this type of criticism was and whether it was prevalent. Those two questions.
Sorry, I think when the Aguda approached Tahini Al-Arz, they wanted to do something from the Arab community, from the Arab society to the Arab LGBT community. And when you, I think as an, let's say, LGBTQ Palestinian organization, when I see this kind of work, when I see it happening, I think that I should look at it and think to myself, I'm a Palestinian organization. I should go to this factory and I should say to this factory, listen, I'm a Palestinian organization, you should donate to me. I think this is the most logic thing to do. But some organizations really love to write and critique some stuff instead of go and do something about it. I think that it's really easy. I am sure that there is pinkwashing, and I am sure that there is so many things that we can do better. And I am sure that there is so many ways to handle so many issues. But the fact is that right now, the Aguda understands that there is a problem, and they find for it a solution. And this is the time to come to the Aguda or to Tahini Al-Arz and say, listen, we have a real opportunity to change stuff here. We have a real opportunity to show the world that we can be a bridge. We have a real opportunity to show the world that we can work together, and we can show the Palestinians and the Israelis how we can make it as an LGBTQ community. But the problem starts when you see somebody doing some work and you start to critique the work instead of doing something about it. I think that what happened with Tahini Al-Arz should go to every Arab organization and teach him something about raising money from Arab organization. Because if they were so brave to do it, probably you can find at least more 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 donors that will want to do it too. But sadly, we will focus about writing critiques and say how wrong is it that the money is going to the Jewish organization. Well, you should ask the money before the Jewish organization asked it. This is simple in my eyes. This is my perspective in life. When you see something like that, you should study the case, and you should go for it, because that means that we can have like an Arab support to an Arab community, and we can have like an amazing thing. But no, I think that most of the organization critiques this, and call it pinkwashing, even though the Aguda is working with Palestinian Arab איך אומרים מדריכים? Counselors. And still they will make it appear like it's just Jewish and just Israelis, but it's not the truth. It's totally not the truth. And I'm losing light, sorry.
So let me move on to some others. We have a question, when does the hotline go live? So we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear how the hotline might impact those who are living in East Jerusalem and beyond into the West Bank. And if we can shed some light, and perhaps this is something that you can speak to, Liron, what is the reality in terms of COVID and its impact? And because of this pandemic, has there been some increased cooperation between Palestinians and Israelis? Might that be something we can learn about here?
Do you
So
guys
Hila,
want to
when are we going live?
the hotline? When does the hotline go live?
I'm sorry, I can't refrain. I have to say something about pinkwashing, okay? I'm sorry, I have to. Okay, thank you.
Please.
Although it's not in the format, I have to break this. I'm being completely Israeli about this. Okay, so the Aguda, we knew we were gonna get hit by every side by doing this. But just like I said before, sometimes you need somebody to be the scapegoat going forward. You need somebody to be the elephant in the China store to start a social change, and that was the decision. And we got hit massively with criticism from each side. And just like what Khader said, at a certain point, we were looking around for 3 damn years seeing kids thrown at the street, people we don't have the means to help, and we feel responsible to help them. And it doesn't matter what sector they come from. This is human rights. I can't ignore that. So that was the decision, to try and form connections with the other organizations. And when we got a no, we had to decide that we're moving on our own because we can't ignore that. So we took on that blame, and you can always yell pinkwash, and pinkwashing is something that the Aguda is fighting the government against as well. We care about the way we're portrayed in contrast to the rights that we're receiving or not receiving in Israel. So this is an internal battle too. And of course, there's a difference in forces and amounts and how much public effect you have, but this is something we're not innocent of too. I mean, we don't get the better of this as well. So I had to put that in little barracks on the side, I'm sorry. But as for what you asked, the hotline is due to start in the end of August. We're currently on the hunt for a full-time position from the Palestinian community to man it, to be the project manager for this. And as I stated in the beginning, we're opening not only the hotline, we're currently in the process of finishing our fundraising, trying to get all the resources that we need to open the entire project, which by the way means that we're duplicating the Aguda website, giving it a different name, a different logo that will be set by that project manager, translating everything into a different page, a separate one in Arabic. We're gonna give all the legal services in Arabic, all the social support in Arabic. So this is a big thing, and it's gonna be launched by the end of August, God willing. So if anybody has any ideas of a very capable full-time man for the job, reach out.
I'm sure you will find many. You got great PR for the position. The other question was regarding the impact of COVID. I know that in our exploration of the impact of COVID on the Arab community specifically, what we saw is that it mapped onto all pre-existing issues and challenges, and it just made them harder. So if it's economic gaps, it hit the Arab community harder. And if it was social services, it made them less accessible, even though it brought a groundswell of volunteering from within the community. It made the need that much greater, and it stretched resources thin. I can only imagine that somebody who didn't have a place to go before COVID because of the challenge of coming out or being gay, social distancing, isolation, finding places would have been even that much more challenging. Can either of you spend a minute or two speaking about this, or how it affected the atmosphere, and if you think it's related to this groundswell that has emerged?
I think that the thing with the COVID is shedding a lot of light about all the weaknesses in all the communities. Like, I think that from the beginning of this pandemic, I think that for me, and it was really unfortunate, not just inside of the Arab LGBTQ society, also in the Israeli society, I think that was the most that I heard about suicide attempt or suicide that happened. And I think that 2 weeks ago, I went to Bet Dror to visit some youth, LGBTQ youth, and see how are they and how do they feel. And I think that if it was harder for them before of this thing, so now it's like double trouble for them. I think it's almost unbearable to somebody without a home, or without support to deal with this thing. I don't have the statistics, but I meet the people and I talk with them, and I think that we are in a really crucial place right now inside of the LGBTQ community in general about this thing. But I have hopes to get over it together. So I don't know what is the statistics. I just hear the news about the violence against women and violence against LGBTs, but I don't know really the statistics.
I think socially it's pretty much a given. I mean, you put people in a pressure cooker and they cook even more. You close them off when they're used to have their little ways of outlets when they're out of the house because they're closeted, and now they don't have it. So it boils up even more. And I can say from the Aguda, from the beginning of the quarantine and the entrance of COVID-19 into our lives, we've had a spike of 35% in the outreach to our services and to our hotlines. So obviously this is affecting. And I think if you can see that it's affecting the Jewish community that's kind of privileged in this way, maybe certain sectors of it, then I think the Arab community gets it even harder. That's triple.
Definitely.
Oppression. And triple oppression under pressure creates more frustration, creates more suicidal thoughts and tendencies. And that's extremely hard. I think it emphasizes even more the need for certain services for the community.
I'm sorry for laughing. I'm just my Facebook is not stopping. I'm having these people adding me one after each other. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my God.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I've got, I think, 2 last questions, and you can handle them within just a couple of minutes. That would be great, but we can go a little bit over. The first question, I'll kind of reframe it, is to say that as somebody from the Jewish community, as I look at Israeli society, I realize that there are all different stripes of Jews in Israel, but it's very easy for somebody sitting here in America to look at Arab society as one and paint it all with one broad brush. I'm wondering, Khader, if you can help us unpack some of the varieties in just a few minutes, of course.
Again,
I would also love to hear you touch on, both of you, on something that I've heard and believe. I understand that the political leaders can come up with an agreement tonight and it would fail tomorrow because we don't have the infrastructure in place. That infrastructure for peace building, we believe, comes from people-to-people programs, from relationships. And is there a sense that if peace is to come, that the LGBTQ communities in Israel, Jewish, Arab, and others, can play a role in moving that forward?
I think that the last few weeks actually proved that there is. I think it definitely proved that there is. if members of the Knesset are voting beneath us, Arabs and Jews, and if we collaborate, like this conversation right now between me and Hila, and this Tahini Al-Arz that donating to the Aguda to help Arabs, and the Aguda is helping the LGBTQ Arabs. I think that there is some hope, but I will tell you what, I think that if change gonna come in this place, it probably will come from the LGBTQs, probably. Because I don't really believe that, sorry, straight people, I don't really believe that straight people, they had their opportunity, and I don't think that they know how to make peace. For me, I swear, like, when, for a gay person or lesbian, I think, for us, maybe to, like, for me to date a Jew, or for a Jew to date an Arab, mostly, not always, because there is racist, definitely there is. But like mostly it will be a bit easier from the straight method. It will be a bit different from the straight method, because we know what does it mean to be a minority. We know what does it mean when you're not accepted. So when you know the feeling, when you know what does it mean to be like not always felt love, or like not always the right person in the room. So you develop compassion, you develop understanding. And in this point, like, I think when I'm sitting in a bar in Tel Aviv with my friends, I almost not feeling the Arab guy, beside of the jokes, of course. But like, I think that mostly the friendship and the leadership in these places, it's really honest, because Arabs and Jews and Druze and Americans and Peruvians and Cubanim and I don't know what, in the end, we know what does it mean to be outcast, and we know what does it mean to be minority. So yes, I definitely believe that in this country, the people that would lead to a change someday will gonna be the LGBTQ community, like always, I think. Always.
Definitely. I think we have this built-in compassion because we felt that in our past. Being rejected as a child makes me sympathize a lot more with people that are rejected for whatever other reason. And I think that the liberal views that the LGBTQ community is demanding are the values that we need to take on to achieve peace, to achieve a better understanding for each group. So I think in a microcosmos, we can look at the LGBTQ community as an example for how we can work together.
Well, I thank you very, very much, and thank our participants and the leaders of the organizations and all of you who joined in. To learn more about A Wider Bridge, please head to awiderbridge.org. To learn more about the Interagency Task Force, please visit iataskforce.org. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tell your friends, tell your family. This is work that shouldn't happen in secret, because it really is heroic peace building. And in terms of the hotline that you're working on, I can't underscore enough, it is life-saving. So thank you very, very much.
I want to emphasize, just before we say goodbye, the amazing work that Khader is doing. Yes. This is not an organization. This is a man with a huge, huge and a need to be a leader. And he's such a good one at that. And that is inspiring.
Thank you, Hila. I really appreciate it.
Heroic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for showing once again just the diversity within the Arab community and how important it is to give space to these voices and get behind the headlines and understand the different trends and developments, and for your work.
Have a great night.
Thank you very much.
Be continued.
Goodbye.